Hello again, my lovely YouTube friends. It is I, your friend, the Pooh, here again to grace you with his presence and do another video for you on YouTube. I am happy to be here again with you guys, and I'm glad that my audience grows every day, and I'm very happy to have such a loyal fan base that cares about me so much. I really appreciate it, and I love you guys very much. Today the Pooh doesn't have any grooming products or chocolate or cologne or soda to talk about. He just wants to say something from the bottom of his heart to one of his best friends. He wants to talk about one of his best friends that he didn't see for 20 years, but he really cares about. That was a good friend who gave him his first job when the Pooh was down on his luck. The Pooh met his friend Andy when he was working at Target when he was 19 years old. Andy was the guy who worked in the video department, and I was working in the general department, just doing my thing. Now, when I first met Andy, I thought he was kind of weird. I thought Andy was a little bit standoffish, and I really didn't know what to think of him. But then we started talking more and more, and we became fast friends. We had a lot in common. And one day, Pooh's working, right? So he gets called to the office, and they did my three-month review. So he gets called to the office, and it's like, check, you did this right, but you did this wrong. So they fired the Pooh. So the Pooh, the first thing he does is go to Andy and says, Andy, I got fired. And Andy's like, no way, why did they fire you? So, well, I got fired, so I'll see you later. So the Pooh left, and didn't think you would see Andy much after that. But then one day, the Pooh was in Hollywood Video across the street, and the Pooh was checking out a video, and Andy had met the Pooh's dad before, because the Pooh's dad was causing problems. And so Andy had to handle the Pooh's dad, who was a firecracker. So Andy, he sees me and says, hey, Gonzalo, how you doing? I'm okay. He's like, hey, so what's going on? You have a job? I'm like, no. He goes, well, if you ever need a job, I'm here. I'm like, oh, okay. So I thought about it. And then I told my dad, hey, Dad, Andy wants to give me a job. So Dad's like, are you a fool? Get the fucking job. So I'm like, okay. So I go to Andy the next day, and I'm like, Andy, can I have the job? He goes, yeah, I'll hire you. And so the Pooh worked his ass off that day when he got hired, and the Pooh was hired as assistant manager the very first day, alongside Andy. So I was an assistant manager there for a month before I went back to reverting to the regular job because it was a little bit too stressful for the Pooh. The Pooh was only 19 years old, and he didn't know how to handle a job like that. So the Pooh worked there for a year, and then he quit. And then he saw Andy again when Andy was working at a place called Kyoto Palace, which is a restaurant. Andy saw him on the street, and he said, "Hey, come to Kyoto Palace with me. I'll hook you up with a soda." So I would go in all the time, and he gave me free soda. So then Andy leaves Kyoto Palace a few months later. So then Pooh calls Andy up, and we watched wrestling together. I met his family. I met his kids when they were young, and it was fun. Then he moves to Hanford, right? I hadn't seen him for 20 years, but I never forgot Andy, right? So thing is, the Pooh thinking about Andy this year, or I don't know how long it was ago, but he decided to get in contact with him. So he looked it up on Facebook. There it was. He sends him a message. Andy, it's the Pooh. And then it's like, hey, brother Pooh. And it's like, so we hit it off like we always did. So Andy, we were talking for about 6-7 months. So then I invited Andy to come over for lunch. So he comes over last week for lunch. We just talked about our lives and everything. Andy looked a little bit haggard, a little bit tired, a little bit older. But, you know, me and Andy were always the same. You just see me and Andy, you know, same thing as always. So I just want to say, Andy, man, brother, I love you so much. You are such a good man to me. You've always been the best to me, and I will never forget you as far long as I live. And we got to do it more often, man. You got the time, I got the time. So let's hang out more often as much as we can. Because, that's what friends are for. So thanks a lot, Andy, for everything you've ever done for me. This is the Pooh, signing off.